I am reading OO again for the third time, and I came across the chapter called The Death Advisor. I love this for so many reasons, but most of all, because every time I read the quote, maybe when you no longer need anything, you can have everything. And when you stop trying to make things happen, anything can. When I hear this, I get really emotional. I know deep down this is very true. But my question is, how do you go about not needing? Right now I'm financially in a very tough spot, and I quite literally need money to pay bills, buy groceries, pay old debts. How do you let go of that stressful feeling when you don't quite have enough? How do you get to the point where you don't feel that you need money? It's so cute. She goes, I really appreciate the calls and the advice. It's actually so sweet when people just say they appreciate being here. I never take that for granted, and I always just feel like this wave of gratitude, so thank you. Okay. She's saying two different things, and I want to talk about both of them. I mean, one is that quote, independent of the second part, which she's absolutely right. This is very hard to do when you're not quite sure how you're going to pay for your next meal. So I'm not trivializing that. But let me go to the first part first, that quote in OO that really says, when you no longer need anything, you can have everything. That quote is so in harmony with what the first hour of this call was really about, is that that's what actually does occur, is that the offering of the deepest needs, and whether they're literal physical needs, like she's describing, or their emotional needs. I remember somebody else wrote once, outside of the forum, and she said, well, this is all well and good, but I'm not talking about manifesting a Maserati. She's like, I can't pay for my medication, I can't pay for this, I can't pay for that. I'm not talking about just like trivial, superficial things that the ego wants. I'm talking about survival. And so I really appreciate that. I get that. But I would still say, when you're dealing, okay, let me do it from the second half and then I'll come back to the first half. When you're dealing with the really hardcore, like basic survival needs, and I had to do this myself when I had the 3 years in bed in my 30s that I was writing about in OO. I did not know week to week how I would get through, because I was getting I can almost still remember the check. I think I was getting $324 a month from SSI because I was so ill. And I was living in San Francisco. Granted, it was the 80s, but it was still that was nothing to live on. And so this was 3 years of my life. I was like, okay, God, just for today, my needs will be taken care of. And, during that period, I trusted a lot less, but I really did not know what to do. But in my own nutty way at the time, just try to offer. And it was true that one way or another, things came. I mean, I made it through that stretch, and it was very, very to the edge. And things came out of nowhere, and certainly not abundance, just enough to get me to the next week. And so this isn't an abstraction to me, what she's talking about. It's like, I get this. But what I would say is that it still does go down to the same issue, that if you say to the divine, you are my source for all, you are my source for all, one way or another it comes. And the more you do trust it, I would say at that point in my life, I didn't even trust it much. The more you trust it, the more you open to receiving. And then the more comes. So I think in one level, I learned a lot by having to live at this extreme margin for quite a time. It makes me feel like a lot of compassion when people write letters like this. I really get it, but I still think it's the same answer. You go back into the divine, and you really say, some days I would just say, send a miracle. I need a way to get through next week. Send a miracle. You know, and I can tell you that back in that day, if I'd sat around visualizing myself living in a mansion, having millions of dollars, I wasn't going to do a damn thing, because there was something else I was learning about trust. It was almost like I had to learn how to be in an experience like that, flat on my back, unable to get out of bed, trusting that somehow the money would last, and just surrender and give myself to the divine. I had to have that experience. And I got changed by it, and I got really humbled by it. So I would still say offering is the key, and calling in miracles is the key. And then it changes. Almost anybody I know, if you do this for a while, it just changes, and you don't live at that margin anymore. You get the lesson, and then you don't live at that margin anymore. It just, you don't stay there, because the divine goes, okay, now you trust me. Now, there's no need to stay at that margin. And that kind of leads you to the other part of her story, where that quote where she says, when you no longer need anything, you can have everything. And when you stop trying to make things happen, anything can. That's a central truth. It's not a central truth because I wrote it. It's just a central truth that's how the universe is constructed. The grasping keeps things away. Or it brings it for a while, and then you lose it because the grasping is, again, make a fist. See how closed you are to the universe if you're making a fist to the universe. You can't allow things when the fist is grasping and holding, but when you open the hands and say, let everything that wants to come, come, and let everything that wants to go, go, that's actually when everything can come. It's just this nutty way that God made the world. So nothing wrong with desires, nothing wrong with needs. We're all in bodies. So the more you just take them, though, and you go, sometimes I think it's about blessing the need and blessing the desire. I think it's where you really take, it kind of goes back to what I was saying at the start of the call, you take that issue, whatever it is, whether it's needing to pay your rent or it's your desire for somebody that, you could love, or whatever the issue is, you take that desire or that need and you bless it. Rather than saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this, or I should be past this, or I'm not good enough, you drop all that and you just say, I'm blessing this desire, I'm blessing this need, and I'm handing it to God for a miracle of resolution, whatever that is. Sometimes it's the divine saying, not now. I'll give you just enough for what you need right now, but the rest of it, not now, later. You have something else to work through first. But certainly when you're talking about issues of just physical survival, offering it over brings, at the very least, what's needed in the moment, and then more, the more you open. So, at least that's been my experience.